The first time my ex-husband and I fought over custody of our son, I won. That victory ruined my life. The second time, I stepped aside and let my ex take him. That decision killed my ex-husband. So when I opened my eyes for a third time and found myself back in the same family courtroom, staring at the same 10-year-old boy with his hands locked together in his lap, I felt no relief. Only fear. The judge leaned forward. Caleb, I know this is difficult. You are not responsible for deciding the entire case, but your wishes matter. Do you feel safer living primarily with your mother or your father? Caleb bit his lower lip. He said nothing. Then a child's voice sounded inside my head. Mom. Please pick me. I only want to live with Mom. My entire body went cold. I had heard those exact words before. In my first life, I believed they were my son's thoughts. Back then, the divorce between Ethan and me had already turned ugly. We had fought over the house, schedules, school pickup, holidays, everything. By the time custody became the last major issue, neither of us was behaving like someone trying to protect a child. We were trying to win. Ethan had the stronger case on paper. He made more money. His work schedule was flexible. He owned a large house near Caleb's private school. I had a demanding management job and often traveled. When the judge asked Caleb where he wanted to live, he stayed silent. But inside my head, I heard him. Mom. Please choose me. I had looked at his terrified little face and convinced myself his silence meant fear. I promised the court I would rearrange my work schedule. I agreed to move closer to school. I said I had no plans to remarry or have more children if that was relevant to stability. I fought until I won primary physical custody. Then I spent every waking hour trying to prove I deserved it. I stopped traveling. I turned down a promotion. I raced home after work. I learned the names of every teacher, coach, and parent in Caleb's class. I planned meals around his preferences and weekends around his activities. Because I worried he missed his father, I overcompensated for every empty space in our new life. 6 months later, Child Protective Services came to my door. A police officer stood beside the caseworker. Caleb was behind them, crying so hard he could barely breathe. I wanted Dad from the beginning, he sobbed. Mom wouldn't let me go. She hits me when I say I miss him. I stared at him. There were bruises on his upper arms. A long mark across his back. Small cuts near his shoulder. I had never caused any of them. Not one. I said that over and over. No one believed me. Ethan arrived at the house less than an hour later. He looked at Caleb's injuries, then at me, and his face twisted. What did you do to him? Nothing. Don't lie to me. I'm not. He wanted to live with me. I froze. Ethan's eyes were red. In court, he wanted me. The room seemed to tilt. No, I whispered. He wanted me. What? I heard him. Ethan stared at me. I should have stopped talking. Instead, desperate people always say too much. I heard his thoughts. He said he wanted me. He said he was scared you would be angry if he said it out loud. The police officer exchanged a look with the caseworker. That one sentence changed everything. The investigation stopped being only about abuse. It became about my mental state. Every explanation made me sound worse. I insisted I could hear Caleb's unspoken voice. I insisted someone else had heard him. I insisted the entire situation was wrong. The more frightened I became, the more unstable I appeared. Eventually, I was placed on an emergency psychiatric hold. Then the court extended it. My attorney shifted from trying to prove I was innocent to trying to prove I was too unwell to be criminally responsible. I spent the rest of that life inside a secure psychiatric hospital. I died there. The second time I woke up in the same courtroom, I remembered everything. I heard the same voice. Mom. Please choose me. So I did the opposite. I withdrew my request for primary custody. Ethan won. For months, guilt hollowed me out. I waited for a call telling me Caleb had been hurt. Instead, years passed. Then Ethan asked to see me. He was in a private hospital room, dying. He had lost so much weight I barely recognized him. Doctors had spent months investigating unexplained organ damage until toxicology finally suggested long-term exposure to a poison in small repeated doses. Ethan could barely speak. He took my wrist. It was Caleb. I stared at him. No. He admitted it. His voice scraped through his throat. He said he wanted you. He said I stole him from you. My knees weakened. Then he whispered something that frightened me more than the poisoning. I heard him too. I leaned closer. What? At the custody hearing. His fingers tightened around mine. He told me he wanted me. I couldn't breathe. Ethan closed his eyes. Not you. My mouth went dry. He told me the opposite. Ethan's eyes opened again. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. We understood the same impossible thing at the same time. Then he died. Now we were both back. Both remembering. Both trapped in the same courtroom for a third time. And once again, the voice inside my head said, Mom. Please choose me. I looked across the aisle. Ethan's face had gone rigid. He looked at me. I knew. He had heard something too. The judge adjusted the papers in front of her. If Caleb cannot express a preference, I can still decide based on the custody evaluation, school stability, each parent's schedule, and the parenting plan submitted to the court. No. Ethan's voice cracked across the courtroom. The judge frowned. Mr. Mercer? I need a recess. His attorney grabbed his sleeve. Ethan. Please. The judge's expression hardened, but she granted 10 minutes. The second we entered the conference room, Ethan shut the door. You remember. It wasn't a question. So do you. He swore under his breath. How much? Enough. I died. I know. His head snapped up. How? You told me before you died. He stared. I told him about my first life. The accusations. The bruises. The psychiatric hospital. When I finished, Ethan sat down slowly. For the first time since our divorce began, there was no anger between us. Only terror. In my second life, he said, Caleb told me you treated him badly. Not out loud. In my head. I heard the opposite. He told me he wanted me. He told me he wanted me. Ethan rubbed both hands over his face. What the hell is wrong with our son? I don't know. He was 10. He still is. A 10-year-old doesn't engineer this. I looked toward the wall separating us from the courtroom. No normal 10-year-old does. Ethan lowered his hands. Then take him. I laughed once. It sounded awful. No. You heard him say he wants you. And you heard him say he wants you. He poisoned me. He got me locked away. We stared at each other. Finally Ethan muttered, "This is insane." For once, we agree. A court clerk knocked. Our recess was over. When we returned, the judge asked whether we had reached an agreement. We both said no. She leaned back. This court is not a game. Neither of us answered. She looked at Caleb. Then at us. Even if you divorce, both of you remain legally responsible for your child. I can order a parenting schedule if necessary. You cannot simply refuse your obligations because the litigation has become difficult. The voice hit me again. Mom. I choose Mom. Across the aisle, Ethan flinched. I looked at him. He mouthed one word. Me. We both turned toward Caleb. Who do you want? I asked. Ethan spoke at almost the same time. Say it out loud. Caleb stared at us. I forced my voice to stay gentle. No one will be angry. Ethan nodded. Just tell us. Caleb's face turned red. His mouth trembled. Then he burst into tears. I don't want to choose. The judge called his name softly. Caleb shook his head and cried harder. I want us to be a family again. I want Mom and Dad together. The courtroom filled with murmurs. People watching from the public gallery whispered that divorce was cruel to children. Someone said we had been fighting over him for months and now looked like neither of us wanted him. I should not have cared. But when I saw my son sobbing with his shoulders shaking, something inside me cracked. For 10 years, he had been my child. Whatever had happened in 2 other lives, that love did not vanish on command. Ethan looked no better. Through our lawyers, we requested a short continuance. The judge agreed to 5 days and ordered the temporary parenting schedule to remain in place. She also directed Caleb's guardian ad litem to increase contact with him during the delay. That evening, because neither Ethan nor I trusted sending Caleb back and forth while we knew so little, we returned to the former family home together. Caleb cried himself to sleep upstairs. Ethan and I sat in the living room, one at each end of the couch. What if he still refuses in 5 days? Ethan asked. I don't know. What if the voices keep happening? I don't know. He rubbed his jaw. I asked people. About the voice? About anything strange. His teachers. The housekeeper. My driver. The school counselor. Nobody else ever heard anything. I stared toward the stairs. Only us. And we hear different things. Always opposite. Ethan's expression tightened. So they can't actually be his thoughts. Unless his brain is running 2 separate campaigns. He gave me a look. Not funny. I wasn't joking. Silence settled again. Our parents were dead. Neither of us had siblings we trusted with guardianship. There was no obvious third relative Caleb could secretly prefer. I thought about the child I remembered. Sweet. Polite. Thoughtful. At 8, he had won a school writing contest with an essay called The Person I Love Most. It had been about me. How did that child become the boy who accused me of abuse? How did he become the teenager who poisoned his father? Had the divorce broken something in him? Or had we never known him at all? Then I thought of my closest friend, Laura. Ethan looked over. What about her? She works at a hospital with one of the best child trauma programs in the city. You want to put him in therapy before court? I want someone who knows more than we do to tell us what we're looking at. The next morning, I called Dr. Laura Reed. Laura and I had been friends since college. She was a pediatric psychologist. When my marriage began collapsing, she was the first person I trusted. She had listened to me cry. She had recommended mediators, parenting books, sleep routines for Caleb, stress reduction techniques for me. She had told me again and again that whatever happened between Ethan and me, we had to protect our child. So when I asked for help, she did not hesitate. She referred us to Dr. Samuel Pierce, a clinician who specialized in guided relaxation and structured memory interviews. At the hospital, Ethan leaned toward me. You trust this? I trust Laura. The words came naturally. Too naturally. Dr. Pierce made his limits clear before he began. I am not going to use hypnosis to produce hidden truths. Memory is suggestible. Children are especially vulnerable to leading questions. What I can do is help Caleb relax and ask neutral questions about emotionally important memories. That's all we want, I said. Caleb looked frightened. I'm not sick. No one said you were. I want to go home. Ethan knelt beside him. We'll be here the whole time. Laura stood near the wall with her arms folded. Her dark hair fell in long curls over one shoulder. I noticed it. Then immediately hated myself for noticing. Caleb eventually relaxed enough to close his eyes and answer simple questions. Dr. Pierce asked, what do you want more than anything right now? Caleb's breathing slowed. I want Mom and Dad together. Ethan looked at me. I looked away. What is the happiest day you remember? Caleb smiled faintly. The amusement park. When was that? I was little. Who was there? Mom and Dad. Tell me what they looked like. Dad wore his nice suit. Ethan frowned. Then Caleb continued. Mom wore a red dress. My chest tightened. Her hair was long and curly. I stopped breathing. She looked like a princess. Ethan stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. No. Dr. Pierce immediately opened his eyes and stopped the exercise. Caleb stirred. Laura moved toward me. Nora? Ethan stared at my hair. It had been short since college. I hated long hair. I had never worn it past my shoulders. That wasn't her, Ethan said. Laura caught my elbow as my knees weakened. Children blend memories, she said. Costumes, cartoons, photographs, dreams. This doesn't prove anything. I pulled away from her hand. I looked at her hair again. Long, dark, curled. Laura noticed. For 1 second, something flickered in her eyes. Then it vanished. We ended the session. In the hallway, I said, I want a DNA test. Laura stared. What? Me. Ethan. Caleb. Nora. I need it. You have raised that child for 10 years. I know. You're talking about destabilizing him because he described a hairstyle. I need the test. Ethan stepped beside me. So do I. Laura's face softened into professional concern. All right. If this is the only way to calm both of you down, I'll arrange an expedited parentage panel. By late afternoon, the report was ready. The probability that Ethan and I were Caleb's biological parents was listed above 99%. I stared at the result. Ethan exhaled. So that's it. I wanted it to be. I wanted to believe trauma had made us paranoid. I wanted to believe the voices were some impossible shared psychological phenomenon created by 2 lifetimes of fear. After dinner, Caleb asked Ethan to play a racing game. They sat on the rug. For 10 minutes, we almost looked like a family. Then I asked casually, Caleb, the amusement park memory. The woman with the red dress and long curly hair. Who was she? Mom. The answer came instantly. Then Caleb froze. My pulse jumped. When did I have long hair? His eyes filled. Nora, Ethan warned. I just want an answer. Caleb ran upstairs. A minute later he came back carrying an old photo album. He opened it to a page near the middle. This. I looked down. There I was. Red dress. Long curly hair. A cheap silver crown. Ethan beside me in a dark suit. Caleb between us wearing a night costume. His preschool had held a storybook graduation day. Parents were supposed to dress as fairy tale characters. I had worn a wig. After the event, Ethan and I promised Caleb a full day at the amusement park. We stayed less than an hour. Ethan got an emergency work call. Then I got one. We argued in the parking lot about whose job mattered more. Then we left. Caleb had never forgotten. A day we barely remembered had become his happiest memory. I sat down. Ethan looked like someone had punched him. We forgot. Both of us. Caleb stood at the bottom of the stairs. You said we'd go back. My throat closed. We should have. You never did. Ethan knelt. I'm sorry. Caleb looked away. For several hours, that explanation felt enough. Maybe there was no conspiracy. Maybe he was simply a neglected child terrified of divorce. Maybe in the first life he lied because he wanted to force us back together. Maybe in the second he hurt Ethan because he blamed him. Maybe we had helped create the disaster through absence, guilt, and competition. That night, after Caleb went to bed, Ethan and I opened every old album we owned. Birth. First steps. First birthday. Preschool. Fevers. School concerts. Summer trips. Then one photograph slid loose from behind another. Caleb was 6 months old. He was asleep in the arms of our housekeeper, Evelyn Reed. Evelyn had worked for us almost since Caleb was born. She was in her early 60s now. Widowed, she always said. One adult son who worked as a driver. In the picture, she was not looking at the camera. She was looking at the baby. There was something in her expression I could not name. I turned the page. Caleb at 2. Evelyn kneeling beside him. Another. Caleb at 3 with a fever. Evelyn asleep in a chair next to his bed. Another. A photograph taken after an accident outside school. A car had jumped the curb. Ethan and I had been too far away. Evelyn had thrown herself at Caleb and knocked him clear. She broke her leg. We had given her a huge bonus and helped her make the down payment on a small condo. At the time, I called it loyalty. Now I wondered if it was something else. Ethan watched my face. What? I turned back to the photograph of Evelyn holding infant Caleb. I don't think he wants you. Ethan went still. Or me. No. I looked toward the stairs. I think he wants someone else. 2 days later, we took Caleb to the amusement park. No work calls. No assistants. No meetings. No leaving early. When I told him, his whole face lit up. Really? Really? All day? All day. He looked at Ethan. You promise? Ethan held up one hand. I promise. Caleb ran to get his shoes. The excitement hurt to watch. We had money. We had professional success. We had a house with more rooms than 3 people needed. Yet apparently one uninterrupted day with both parents still felt like a miracle to our son. We rode everything he wanted. Ethan got sick on a spinning ride and pretended he hadn't. Caleb laughed until his face turned red. We ate bad pizza. Bought a giant stuffed dragon. Took pictures by the fountain. By late afternoon, Caleb was glowing. I sat beside him on a bench. If Dad and I decided not to divorce, would that make you happy? The smile vanished from Caleb's face for half a second. Then returned. Of course. That's what you want most? Yes. Ethan and I exchanged a glance. No voice came. Nothing inside my head begged me to keep the family together. Nothing told Ethan the same. We had just offered Caleb the exact future his supposed thoughts demanded. Silence. That mattered. 2 days later, family court resumed. The judge asked if we had made progress. Ethan stood. We have. Caleb looked toward him. Ethan continued, after careful consideration, Nora and I intend to continue with the divorce. Pain hit Ethan's face. At the same instant, a high, nearly inaudible pulse seemed to pass through my skull. Then the voice exploded inside my head. Mom, help me. I don't want Dad. I saw him hugging another woman. He doesn't love us. Please take me away. I whipped toward Caleb. He was looking directly at me. His eyes were wet. Across the aisle, Ethan recovered from his own reaction. He stared at me. We both knew. The voice had returned exactly when reconciliation disappeared as an option. Not at the amusement park. Not when Caleb was truly happy. Here. In court. At the custody decision. I stood. We are asking the court not to enter a final residential schedule today. The judge frowned. Why? Because we believe there may be undisclosed facts about our son's identity and his relationship with another adult in our household. Whispers moved through the gallery. The judge's voice sharpened. Mrs. Mercer, be specific. I turned. Evelyn Reed was sitting behind Caleb. For 10 years, she had been the person who knew where his shoes were, which cereal he liked, when his dentist appointment was, and how to calm him after a nightmare. She had been more present than either of us. I pointed toward her. We want a court-supervised investigation involving our housekeeper. Evelyn's face changed. Only for an instant. Then she stood. That is outrageous. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. Evelyn's eyes filled. I have cared for that boy since he was a baby. Is that my crime? Caleb started crying. Evelyn immediately went to him. She bent down, opened her arms, and he fell against her chest. There, sweetheart. I'm here. It looked natural. Too natural. I swallowed. Caleb. He looked at me from her arms. If living with me meant you could never see Evelyn again, would you still choose me? His hands locked around Evelyn. Terror crossed his face. Everyone saw it. The judge did too. But family courts do not transfer custody to a housekeeper because a child hugs her. The judge's expression remained controlled. I am not making a legal parent determination based on speculation or emotional attachment. I understand. Then what exactly are you requesting? A forensic custody evaluation and DNA testing under verified chain of custody. The room went still. Evelyn turned white. No. The word came too quickly. She recovered. I mean, this is humiliating. I'm 62 years old. People are going to hear this and think you're accusing me of being his mother. I didn't say you were. Evelyn stopped. A voice behind me cut through the room. Nora, enough. Laura stood from the second row. Her face was red with anger. You already have a certified parentage report. She walked forward with a folder. I brought a copy because I knew this was becoming irrational. She handed it to the clerk. The testing was performed through Northbridge Medical Center. The lab director reviewed it. Nora and Ethan are Caleb's biological parents. The judge read the report. Laura turned toward me. Are you accusing me of falsifying medical records? No. That answer surprised her. I think the report is real. Then what are you doing? I think the sample identity is false. Laura's face emptied. For less than a second. Then outrage returned. You think I substituted another child's DNA? I think someone did. Ethan stepped beside me. We're asking for fresh buccal swabs collected here or by a court-approved laboratory with photo identification and direct observation. The judge looked at the guardian ad litem. Then at Laura. Then at us. Laura said, this is abuse by litigation. They're traumatizing a child because they regret the custody fight. Evelyn began crying loudly. I'm an old woman. I cannot have children. I had complications when I was young. Doctors told me decades ago I would never carry another pregnancy. People in the gallery started murmuring against us. I heard someone whisper that we were rich parents trying to dump a child on the woman who actually raised him. Another person said Caleb was unlucky to have us. Laura crossed her arms. Nora, apologize to Evelyn and take your son home. I lifted my head. Apologize? Yes. For what? For accusing her of being Caleb's mother. I stared at Laura. I never accused Evelyn of being his mother. Laura's expression changed. The room quieted. She said carefully, then why do you want DNA testing between them? Because blood relation does not only mean mother and child. Laura took one step backward. The final pattern clicked into place so violently I almost laughed. Long curly hair. Laura's obsession with our marriage. Her access to psychological techniques. The private lab arrangement. Evelyn's impossible devotion. The driver Laura had recommended years ago. I looked at Laura. You are his mother. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Laura laughed. It sounded brittle. Nora, you're having some kind of breakdown. Then take the test. I'm not dignifying this. You won't need to. The court can order testing if there's enough factual basis. Laura's eyes hardened. What factual basis? Daniel's investigator had sent him a report early that morning. He placed a copy on counsel table. Laura Reed is legally married. Laura went very still. Ethan continued. Her husband is Owen Reed. Evelyn stopped crying. Mr. Reed has worked for me as a driver for 9 years. The judge looked at Evelyn. Then Laura. Ethan said, and Evelyn Reed is Owen's mother. A strange, heavy silence fell over the room. Laura's voice dropped. That proves nothing. No, I agreed. But it explains access. The judge ordered a recess and directed court security to keep all relevant adults inside the building while she consulted counsel. Laura demanded to leave. The judge refused. Under the existing parentage dispute, the court had authority to order fresh testing before entering a final custody order. This time, no private collection. No friend arranging the lab. No samples sent by courier. A court-approved technician swabbed me. Then Ethan. Then Caleb. All 3 identities were verified in person. The samples were sealed and signed. Laura refused voluntary testing. So did Evelyn. The judge did not force their samples that afternoon. She didn't need to yet. The first question was simpler. Was Caleb biologically ours? While we waited, Ethan pulled me into an empty attorney conference room. What did you hear earlier? I told him. He stared at the wall. I heard that you were sleeping with a coworker. Of course you did. He said he saw you kissing the man after school pickup. The voice told me you hugged another woman. Same purpose. Opposite stories. Keep us fighting. I paced once. Laura has been involved in every major stage. She introduced the mediator. Recommended the relaxation recordings. Referred the therapist. Arranged the DNA test. Evelyn handled our clothes. Owen handled your car. Ethan's face changed. What? What? My jacket. He touched the inside seam near his collar. What about it? I keep hearing the voice when I wear court clothes. I looked down at my blouse and blazer. The courtroom voice always came when I was dressed for hearings. My skin prickled. We returned to the restroom area where I could examine my jacket privately. Inside the lining, near the collar seam, I felt something flat. I tore 2 stitches with a nail file. A metal disc no wider than a coin dropped into my hand. I stared at it. Then walked straight to court security. Ethan found another in his jacket. A technical officer from the courthouse took one look and called an evidence technician. Preliminary inspection suggested the discs were miniature audio transducers. Not magic. Not brain-reading technology. tiny speakers capable of transmitting sound through fabric and bone contact at low volume. Enough, placed near the collar, to make a familiar voice seem strangely close. Almost internal. That still did not explain why we interpreted it as thought. Then I remembered the sleep recordings. Months before the divorce, Laura had told both of us that stress was making us reactive. She gave us separate guided audio programs. Nightly breathing exercises. Suggestion-based relaxation. Repeated phrases about listening to our parental instincts. Trusting what we heard beneath the noise. At the time it sounded harmless. Now it made me sick. A familiar recorded child's voice, conditioned into half-sleep for weeks, then replayed through concealed transducers in moments of extreme stress. The mind would do the rest. It was not telepathy. It was psychological manipulation supported by hidden hardware. The court ordered the devices sealed for forensic examination. Laura stopped calling me unstable. The DNA results arrived before the building closed. I read the page once. Then again. Ethan came beside me. No biological parent-child relationship could be established between Caleb and either of us. My hands went numb. Ethan lowered himself into a chair. The judge stared at the report for a long time. Then she looked at Laura. Dr. Reed, do you want to explain why the previous report differs from this one? Laura's face had turned gray. The lab must have made an error. Which lab? She didn't answer. The judge turned to the guardian ad litem. Protective custody pending identity investigation. Caleb began screaming. No. He ran toward me. Mom. My body moved before my mind did. Then I stopped. 10 years. Fevers. Birthday cakes. School concerts. Nightmares. His first lost tooth. His first bicycle. None of those memories became fake because of a DNA report. But neither did the psychiatric hospital. Neither did Ethan's poisoning. I felt like my body had split into two people. One wanted to pick him up. The other wanted to run. Laura suddenly pushed through the aisle. You cannot take him. Court security blocked her. The judge's eyes narrowed. Then tell me who his parents are. Laura said nothing. Caleb cried harder. Evelyn begged everyone to stop. I looked at Laura's pocket. Her hand kept moving toward it. Searching. I remembered the timing of the voices. I moved before she could. A small remote control slipped from the pocket when security pulled her arm away. Ethan stared at it. Laura stopped struggling. I looked down at my scarf clasp. A second tiny device was hidden beneath the decorative backing. I tore it off. Looking for this? Laura's lips parted. The courtroom went silent. I said, only Ethan and I hear Caleb's supposed thoughts. I held up the device. And we don't hear the same thing. Ethan stepped forward. When Nora hears that Caleb is afraid of me, I hear that Caleb is afraid of her. I continued, the messages always push us toward conflict. They never appear randomly, Ethan said. They appear at custody hearings, during arguments, or whenever reconciliation threatens the custody fight. I looked at Laura. You trained us to associate Caleb's recorded voice with internal thought. She shook her head. No. You gave us the sleep audio. Stress treatment. You referred every clinician. Because you asked for help. Evelyn had access to our clothes. She's a housekeeper. Owen had access to our cars. He's a driver. Your husband. Laura's jaw tightened. I stepped closer. You planted your entire family inside our house. Evelyn cried out, "Don't bring my son into this." Every person in the courtroom turned toward her. She realized what she had said. Too late. Ethan's voice went cold. Owen is already with investigators. Evelyn's face crumpled. He didn't do anything. Then why are you afraid? The judge ordered the hearing terminated and referred the matter to law enforcement and child protective services immediately. By evening, detectives had search warrants in motion. I did not care about the hearing anymore. I cared about one question. If Caleb was not my son, where was my son? At the police station, Laura sat across a glass partition. Her attorney had told her not to speak. She ignored him. You always thought you were better than me. I stared. Where is my child? You had everything. Where is he? The career. The money. Ethan. The house. Where is my son? Her mouth twisted. And I got to watch you raise mine. The room disappeared. Ethan grabbed the edge of the table. What did you say? Laura smiled. You heard me. I stood so fast my chair fell backward. A detective stepped between us. You switched our babies. Laura leaned back. You people buy everything. Childcare. Drivers. Private schools. Tutors. You didn't even notice. I wanted to kill her. For the first time in 3 lives, I understood how a person could become violent before deciding to. Ethan caught my arm. Nora. I shook him off. Where is he? Laura laughed. You care now? Tell me. Maybe he's dead. My vision went white. Then another thought cut through the rage. No. Laura's smile faltered. You didn't kill him. She said nothing. You couldn't. You don't know anything. I know the first DNA report was real. Her face changed. I leaned toward the glass. You used my actual son's sample. Silence. The lab didn't falsify the result. You submitted his DNA under Caleb's identity. Laura looked away. I felt my knees weaken. That means you needed him alive. Ethan whispered, insurance. I nodded. If we ever questioned parentage, you needed a biological sample from our real child to keep the switch hidden. Laura's eyes flashed. There. I had her. My son is alive. She smiled again, but the triumph was gone. Find him, then. The conspiracy unraveled over the next several weeks. Laura and I had met in college. I thought we were best friends. She thought we were competitors. I never knew. By the time I became pregnant, resentment had already hardened inside her. Ethan's business was doing well. My career was advancing. We'd bought a large house. Laura married Owen, who moved from job to job and never earned what she believed he deserved. She became pregnant soon after I did. She told me she had accepted professional training out of town. I congratulated her. I never knew the dates. Never saw her pregnant. Never questioned the long coats and carefully framed video calls. Evelyn had already been working in our home by then. She was not a random housekeeper. She was Laura's mother-in-law. Owen later became Ethan's driver. They built access around us. One trusted role at a time. When I went into labor, Laura's family used forged transfer paperwork and a compromised contractor working around the maternity unit to create a narrow opportunity. My newborn was removed under the pretense of additional observation. Laura's newborn was brought back. Hospital investigators later found inconsistencies that should have been noticed. A wristband reprint. A missing timestamp. A nurse's signature entered after shift change. Nothing large enough alone to expose the switch. Together, they told the story. I took Laura's son home. She took mine. Then she hid him. 4 years. The false parentage test had been designed as emergency backup. If I ever became suspicious, Laura could access my biological son's stored hair or buccal samples and submit them under Caleb's identity. The lab would tell the truth. Just not about the child standing in front of me. I thought I had known betrayal before. I had not. The first life had taken my freedom. The second took Ethan's life. This truth took 10 years of motherhood and broke it into pieces I could not name. But the worst part was still ahead. Noah had known. Not everything. Not from birth. But by at least 8, he knew Laura was his biological mother. He knew Owen was his father. He knew Evelyn was his grandmother. The investigators recovered messages, recordings, and coaching notes. Laura told him Ethan and I were temporary. That wealthy people only loved children when they were convenient. That one day we would throw him away. She taught him to lie before we could betray him first. In the first life, the abuse allegation had been planned. Evelyn helped create the bruises. Laura coached the story. The goal was to remove me, return Caleb to Ethan, and keep the inheritance path open. In the second life, once Ethan had custody, the plan changed. Investigators found searches for slow-acting toxins on Owen's old laptop. They found notes in Laura's files about symptoms that could resemble autoimmune disease. They found recorded instructions aimed at a child. Small amount. Not every day. Never from the same container. I stopped reading. Ethan read the rest. He walked into the station restroom and vomited. When he came out, his face looked older. How much did Caleb know? Enough. Did he know he was poisoning me? The detective hesitated. Based on the recovered material, yes. Ethan closed his eyes. He was a child. Yes. She made him do it. She coached him. That's not the same as making. No one answered. That was the problem. Caleb was both victim and participant. A child manipulated by adults. A child who still made choices. There was no clean emotion available to us. Child Protective Services placed him in therapeutic foster care while juvenile proceedings and psychological evaluation moved forward. Ethan and I did not petition to take him back. People judged us. I understood why. They saw a 10-year-old boy. They saw 2 adults who had raised him since birth. They did not live our previous lives. They did not hear his accusations. They did not die from poison. They did not know where compassion ended and self-destruction began. I authorized funding for independent therapy through a court-controlled trust that his biological family could not touch. Ethan contributed too. Then we stepped away. We did not owe Laura access to our home through her son. We did not owe Caleb our inheritance. And we could not pretend the last 2 lives had never happened. Still, every night, I cried. Not only for my missing biological child. For the little boy I had tucked into bed for 10 years. Both griefs were real. They did not cancel each other. Meanwhile, the search for my real son continued. Laura refused to give investigators a location. Owen blamed Laura. Evelyn blamed both of them. None gave a useful answer. Police traced school records, medical bills, false guardianship papers, cash withdrawals, storage units, old phone numbers. Every lead broke into 3 more. One boy matched the birthday. Wrong DNA. Another had been registered under a false surname. Wrong child. A residential program had suspicious intake records. Dead end. Every doorbell made me run. Every unknown call made my hands shake. One night I found Ethan sitting on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m. He had not turned on the light. I sat beside him. Do you think he knows we exist? I don't know. Do you think he thinks we abandoned him? The question hurt too much. Probably. Ethan covered his face. I spent 2 lives fighting you over the wrong child. So did I. I almost hated you. I did hate you. He laughed once. Fair. Then he went quiet. We failed both of them. I looked over. No. He dropped his hands. We did. We failed as spouses. We were absent too much. We outsourced too much of our son's daily life. We let Laura become the person we called whenever parenting became difficult. Exactly. But we did not switch babies. He stared at me. We did not kidnap anyone. We should have noticed. Maybe. I swallowed. But being imperfect parents is not the same as causing the crime. He looked down. That distinction mattered. Not because it erased responsibility. Because predators love turning another person's flaws into permission. Laura had used our busy schedules as access. She had not been entitled to our child because we worked too much. We could face what we did wrong without adopting guilt for what she did. I put my hand on Ethan's. We find him. His fingers closed around mine. We find him. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. I was upstairs. I heard it and ran so fast I nearly missed the last step. Then I stopped in front of the security panel. My hand hovered over the unlock button. For weeks, I had done this. Detectives. Lawyers. Reporters. Court officials. Delivery drivers. Every ring made me believe, for one stupid second, that someone had found my son. Every time, the hope collapsed. Ethan came up behind me. He did not tell me to calm down. He only placed his hand over mine. Together. I nodded. We opened the door. 2 detectives stood outside. Between them was a small boy holding a faded backpack against his chest. He was 10. I knew that from the case file. But he looked younger. 7, maybe 8. Too thin. His hair had been bleached almost golden by the sun. His wrists disappeared inside the sleeves of an oversized sweatshirt. He looked at Ethan first. Then me. His eyes were enormous. No one moved. One of the detectives crouched slightly. "It's okay, Oliver." The boy swallowed. "Are they?" He stopped. The detective said softly, "Yes." The boy looked at us again. "Are you my parents?" My knees almost gave out. Ethan made a broken sound beside me. I dropped down so I would not tower over the boy. I wanted to grab him. Every part of my body screamed to hold him. But he did not know me. So I kept my hands where he could see them. "I'm Nora." My voice shook. "This is Ethan." Oliver stared at my face. The detective continued, "You can take your time." The boy nodded. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "Mom?" Something inside me shattered. I covered my mouth. Oliver took one uncertain step. Then another. I opened my arms. He came to me. I held him. Not tightly at first. Only enough to let him decide whether to stay. Then his fingers twisted into the back of my shirt. That was permission. I wrapped both arms around him and sobbed into his hair. Ethan knelt beside us. Oliver looked at him through tears. "Dad?" Ethan closed his eyes. Then he pulled us both against him. For 3 lives, I had believed the custody hearing was the center of our tragedy. It wasn't. The real tragedy had begun in a maternity ward 10 years earlier. The wrong child had gone home in my arms. My child had gone somewhere else. And 3 adults I trusted had built an entire future around making sure I never learned the difference. Now my son was here. Alive. That was all I could understand for several minutes. The detectives eventually guided us inside. Oliver sat on the edge of the sofa with his backpack still clutched to him. I brought water. He held the glass in both hands. Ethan sat across from him, as if getting too close might frighten him away. One detective explained what they had found. An old series of payments from Owen led to a woman named Margaret Cole in a farming town several hours away. Margaret had believed Oliver was the son of a distant relative who could not care for him. The guardianship papers were forged. She had never known the child had been kidnapped. For years, Laura and Owen sent small amounts of money and gave vague instructions. Then the payments stopped. Margaret, who was already elderly, continued raising Oliver with almost no support. She homeschooled him irregularly when paperwork became difficult. That was why he had almost disappeared from official systems. Was she bad to him? I asked. The detective shook his head. Not according to what we've seen. My shoulders dropped. She cared for him? Yes. Oliver looked down at his water. Grandma Margaret is nice. The word grandma stabbed me. Not because he loved someone else. Because that someone else had been the only stable adult he knew. I sat next to him, leaving space between us. You don't have to stop loving her. He looked up quickly. You won't be mad? No. He studied my face as if checking for a trap. She didn't know. I know. She said she was sorry. She doesn't need to apologize to you. Oliver's lower lip trembled. Am I staying here? I looked at the detective. The reunification plan had already been explained to us. Emergency placement with biological parents was possible, but the trauma team had recommended a gradual process because Oliver had never met us. I turned back to him. If you're comfortable, you can stay tonight. But no one is going to force you to pretend everything feels normal. Are you sending me somewhere else? No. His eyes filled. Ethan leaned forward. We spent a long time looking for you. Oliver whispered, they told me you didn't want me. I closed my eyes. Laura. Even from a jail cell, the damage she had built still lived inside him. When I opened them again, I said, that was a lie. Why didn't you find me before? Because we didn't know you were missing. Because we had been raising another child. Because the woman I called my best friend stole you. None of those answers belonged in a 10-year-old's first-hour home. So I chose the simplest truth. We didn't know where you were. Oliver looked at me. But you looked. Every day once we knew. Ethan's voice broke. Every day. Oliver set the glass down. He did not hug us again. That was okay. He had already given us more trust than we deserved to expect. That night, I made up the guest room because I could not bear to put him in Caleb's old bedroom. Not yet. Maybe never. Oliver stood in the doorway. Can the door stay open? Of course. And the hallway light? On all night. He nodded. I started to leave. Mom? I stopped. It was the second time he had called me that. The word felt too precious to touch. Yes? Will you be here when I wake up? I sat in the chair beside the bed. I'll be right here. You don't have to sit there. I know. He climbed under the blanket. I remained in the chair. Sometime after midnight, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He looked at me. Then at Oliver. He whispered, you should sleep. So should you. I tried. Me too. He pulled another chair into the hall. We stayed there until morning. In the weeks that followed, the criminal case moved quickly because the evidence had already been building before Oliver was found. Laura's devices were examined by forensic technicians. The transducers in our clothing contained cached audio files. Caleb's voice. Dozens of phrases. Some addressed to me. Some to Ethan. The remote recovered from Laura could trigger different tracks. The sleep audio on our phones contained subliminal repetitions of Caleb's recorded voice mixed beneath the relaxation guidance. Not enough to control anyone's mind. Enough to establish familiarity. Enough that, under stress, the hidden speaker near the caller could be misperceived as a thought rather than an external sound. That mattered legally. Laura had not created supernatural mind reading. She had created a fraud designed to make two exhausted parents distrust their own perception. The prosecution also recovered messages between Laura and Evelyn discussing when to switch our jackets, when to recharge the devices, and how to make sure Ethan and I were never exposed to the same message at the same time. One message from Laura read, if Nora pushes for custody, make her hear that he is afraid of Ethan. Another, if Ethan starts backing off, use the track about Nora being unstable. Another, do not trigger anything when they're together unless we need a fight. I read those lines once. Then I handed the pages back to the detective. The first life made sense. The second life made sense. The third had almost repeated both. Laura's plan never required certainty about which parent would win. That was the genius of it. If I won custody, they would build a case against me. If Ethan won, they would isolate him and use Caleb to hurt him. Either path eventually left Caleb as the legal child and likely heir of the surviving estate. Laura had not been trying to give her son one particular parent. She had been trying to ensure he ended up with our money. The custody battle was simply the mechanism that divided us. Evelyn confessed first. Not out of remorse. Because once she learned Owen was facing serious prison time, she tried to take responsibility for the entire plan. It did not work. The digital evidence tied all three of them together. Owen had installed several of the receivers. He had transported Oliver between caregivers when he was younger. He had helped obtain false identity documents. Laura planned the psychological manipulation. Evelyn maintained access to our home and coached Caleb. All three were charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, identity fraud, evidence tampering, unlawful surveillance, obstruction, and multiple offenses tied to the deliberate attempts to frame and harm us. Laura's medical license was suspended immediately. The hospital opened its own investigation into how she had exploited professional access. The private lab that performed the first DNA test was cleared of wrongdoing. That detail mattered to me. The science had not failed. The sample chain had. Laura had given the lab DNA from Oliver and labeled it as Caleb's. The report told the truth. We had asked the wrong body. Caleb's case was handled separately. Because he was 10, the court focused on protection, psychological assessment, and treatment. The investigators documented that he had been manipulated by the adults around him for years. He had also participated in serious acts. Both facts could be true. That was the part people struggled with. They wanted him to be either innocent or evil. I no longer believed human beings were that simple. He was a child. He had been trained to lie. He had also known enough to hurt us. The court placed him in a specialized therapeutic foster program while permanent decisions were made. I did not ask to adopt him. Neither did Ethan. The guardian ad litem asked us both directly. Are you sure? I looked at the woman who had spent months studying our family. I loved him. I know. I probably still do. Then why not petition? I thought about the first life. The sound of the hospital door locking behind me. The second. Ethan dying under white sheets. Then I thought about Oliver asleep with the hallway light on because he was afraid everyone disappeared at night. Because love is not the same as capacity. She waited. I cannot be the person Caleb needs while I am trying to become the mother Oliver has never had. Ethan nodded beside me. And I can't bring him into my house and spend every meal wondering whether I'm being poisoned. The guardian ad litem did not argue. We agreed to fund treatment through an independent trust administered by a third party. No access for Laura. No inheritance rights. No hidden promise that Caleb would eventually receive our estate. Treatment. Education. Basic security. That was what we could give. Anything more would have been dishonest. Months later, Caleb's therapist sent us a letter. Caleb had asked permission to write to us. I left the envelope unopened on my desk for 2 days. On the third, I read it. The handwriting was uneven. He wrote that Laura had told him for years that Ethan and I would abandon him if we ever learned he was not biologically ours. She told him rich people did not love. They owned. She told him every time I enforced a rule, it meant I was tired of him. Every time Ethan worked late, it meant he did not want him. Evelyn repeated the same ideas. Owen told him that once Ethan and I were gone, the house, money, investments, and company shares would eventually belong to him. He apologized for lying. For helping create injuries that looked like abuse. For putting things in Ethan's food in the other life he remembered only as nightmares. That line stopped me. I read it again. He remembered. Not everything. Fragments. A police officer. A hospital room. Ethan coughing. Me screaming. Maybe rebirth had touched him too. Maybe the mind carries trauma in ways nobody understands. I did not need an answer. At the bottom of the page, Caleb wrote, "You were my mom even if you weren't my real mom." I cried. Then I wrote back. I did not tell him everything was forgiven. That would have been a lie. I told him I had loved him. I told him the adults around him had failed him. I also told him what happened to Ethan and me mattered. I told him that being manipulated did not mean he could avoid learning responsibility. I hoped he would accept treatment. I hoped he would grow into someone who made different choices. I did not invite him home. Ethan read the letter before I mailed it. Add something from me. What? He stared out the window. Tell him I hope he gets better. So I did. Oliver's return was not a magical ending. He did not walk through the door and instantly become our cheerful son. He had spent 10 years believing he had been unwanted. That belief did not vanish because a DNA test changed his last name. He hoarded snacks under his bed. The first time I found them, he panicked. I wasn't stealing. I know. I can put them back. You don't have to. He stared. Then why are you mad? I'm not. You look mad. I sat on the floor. I'm sad that you thought you needed to hide food. His face crumpled. He expected punishment for mistakes. He hated closed doors. He became anxious when plans changed. The first time I was 12 minutes late picking him up from school, I found him breathing so fast the counselor had taken him inside. I knelt in front of him. I'm sorry. You didn't come. I did. You were late. Yes. You said 3:15. I know. His hands shook. I took out my phone. From now on, if I'm going to be late, I call you before the time changes. He looked suspicious. Always? Always. I kept that promise. Ethan did too. We attended reunification therapy. Separately. Together. Sometimes Oliver refused to talk. Sometimes he talked for an hour. He asked questions we hated. Did you love Caleb more because you had him first? No. Would you still have looked for me if he was nice? Yes. Do you wish I looked more like you? No. Why did Laura take me? That one took longer. Because she wanted what we had. Me? I swallowed. She wanted her own son to have our life. Oliver thought about it. So I was in the way. You were never in the way. She acted like I was. I moved closer. That's about her. Not you. For months, he tested that answer. He broke rules and waited to be sent away. He lied about homework. Once, he took cash from my purse and hid it in his backpack. When I confronted him, he burst into tears. Are you giving me back? My heart broke. No. I stole. Yes. You should send me away. No. Why? Because consequences are not abandonment. He looked confused. I held out a list. You'll repay the money through chores. That's it? That's the consequence for the money. We're also going to talk to your therapist about why you felt you needed it. He stared. And I stay? You stay. That night, he left the hallway light off for the first time. Ethan and I did not cancel the divorce. Finding Oliver did not erase everything wrong in our marriage. We had loved each other once. Then we became competitive. We kept score. We let work outrank home. We fought to win instead of speaking to understand. Laura exploited those cracks. But she had not created all of them. So Ethan and I did something neither of us managed in the first 2 lives. We ended the marriage without turning each other into enemies. The custody agreement for Oliver was not a war. We built it with his therapist. School nights primarily with me at first because he had attached to my home faster. Long weekends and scheduled weekdays with Ethan. Flexible holidays. No using the child as a messenger. No interrogating him about the other house. No competing with gifts. We put the rules in writing. Then we followed them. One Saturday, almost a year after Oliver came home, we took him to the amusement park. The same one. I almost suggested somewhere else. Then I decided I was tired of letting old memories own locations. Oliver chose every ride. Ethan complained about all of them. We ate too much. Bought another ridiculous stuffed dragon. At sunset, we sat near the carousel. Oliver leaned against my shoulder. Was I supposed to grow up with you? Yes. Both of you? Ethan nodded. Yes. Would you still be married? Ethan and I looked at each other. I laughed softly. Probably not. Oliver looked surprised. That's bad. No. I tucked his hair behind one ear. Sometimes 2 people can stop being married and still be your parents. He watched the carousel lights. Caleb wanted you to stay married. My chest tightened. Yes. Do you hate him? I answered carefully. No. Do you love him? That was harder. I loved the boy I raised. Oliver looked up. But some things happened that hurt all of us. He nodded. Then asked, do you hate Laura? Ethan coughed. I almost laughed. That answer is less complicated. Oliver smiled. It was small. Real. Then he leaned against me again. The criminal trial ended months later. Laura, Owen, and Evelyn were all convicted on the most serious charges. Their sentences were long. Long enough that Oliver would be an adult before any of them had a realistic chance of returning to his life. At sentencing, Laura looked at me. She had lost weight. Her hair was shorter. I noticed that and hated the irony. She said, "You still think you won?" I did not answer. She kept going. My son had the best schools because of me. The judge warned her. She ignored it. You raised him for me. That finally made me speak. No. Laura smiled bitterly. No? I raised a child because I believed he was mine. Her smile faded. You used that child to destroy 2 families. I looked at her. And you failed. Her face twisted. You lost 10 years with your real son. The words hit where she intended. But they did not knock me down. Yes. I looked toward the back of the courtroom where Oliver sat with a victim advocate and Ethan. And I still found him. Laura had nothing to say after that. The day we came home from sentencing, Oliver was quiet. At dinner, he asked, "Is it over?" "The trial is," Ethan said. "Will they come back?" "Not anytime soon." Oliver stared at his plate. "Can they take me again?" I reached across the table. "No." "Promise?" Ethan answered first. "Promise." Oliver looked at me. I nodded. "Promise." He put his hand over mine. A year earlier, I would have thought that was the ending. The bad people convicted. The truth exposed. My son returned. But the third life had taught me that endings are usually quieter. They happen in ordinary moments. A child finally sleeping without the hallway light. An ex-husband calling before changing a pickup time. A school counselor who knows the real family history. A kitchen where no one is secretly poisoning anyone. A court order that uses Oliver's real name. A birth certificate corrected after 10 years. The first morning he left for a school trip, he stood by the door with his backpack on. "Mom." "Yes?" "You're picking me up Friday?" 5:30. "Not 5:40. 5:30. He narrowed his eyes. "If you're late?" "I call first." He nodded. "Okay." Then he walked outside. Halfway down the path, he ran back and hugged me. No warning. No fear. Just a hug. Then he ran to the bus. I stood in the doorway watching until it disappeared. My phone buzzed. "Ethan. You crying?" I typed back. "No." He replied. "Liar." I laughed. For the first time, the sound of my phone did not make me afraid. Years earlier, in family court, the voice inside my head had said, "Mom. Choose me." I thought choosing a child meant winning custody. Then I thought it meant sacrificing everything. I was wrong both times. Sometimes choosing someone means protecting them. Sometimes it means refusing to let them hurt you. Sometimes it means following evidence instead of fear. And sometimes it means admitting the child in front of you is not the child who was stolen from you, even when your heart has loved him for 10 years. The third time, Ethan and I did not choose Mom. We did not choose Dad. We chose the truth. And the truth led our son home.